Hi, people. Yes, we can raise people's awareness about the power of stereotypes and labeling of a person, of a culture, of a race, of genders, of a community, of a country. Why do I say that? Why is it important? Yesterday we can share with people stereotype and labeling, as we can challenge these stereotypes. Why is it important? Because we still live in the world of stereotypes. Today, negative, popular racial stereotypes about African diaspora males are still being shared around the world because they make millions and trillions of dollars. So in a film, you have to understand the black and white minstrel show was around from 1830 to 1987 in Britain, making trillions of dollars. Then it was brought, that was in the theatre. And what happened, you had to know that it made trillions of dollars. Sheet music, people have their own events in museums, and galleries. They have their own socials where people used to dress up as black and white minstrel show. Even Hitler's girlfriend, she dressed up as black and white minstrel show. This just shows you how popular entertainment this was throughout Europe, for people to dress up as blacks. Not only actors or actresses, but the people in general got costumes and acted the black and white minstrel show in the home. So I'm talking Hitler's girlfriend, she used to dress up. And if you know the history of Germany and swing and jazz, it's important for us to understand how people can hate a people, and get an understanding of, yes, we can challenge stereotypes, because the swing kids in Germany challenged the stereotypes, stood up against the Gestapo. You have to understand, the Gestapo could not destroy people's love for swing dancing and music making in Germany. You have to understand the significance of how powerful the music that African diaspora people made. A smaller group's music, but it's not only that, it was not music culture, which was a culture, lifestyles and movements became that of people across the globe. It changed people across the globe. It changed them as a people. Do you understand? And it's important for understand it made trillions of dollars. Now, that was just in 1830. But it started from Jim Crow in 1750. The 1830 black and white minstrel show was basically middle class approach to basic Jim Crow. So it was more refined. 1750 was saloons. Rough back saloons where Jim Crow came this character, and a gentleman saw a black male inside a barn. He had a limp, etc., etc., and he made a joke, made this character called Jim Crow, and it came part of a law, and that started in 1750. Now that all started after the Jim Crow came about, after a decade after the drum had been banned in Americas and in the Caribbean, where people got that. But obviously before that there was slavery. And that's how it started, how people started to caricature us as a people. But it started a long time before that. African diaspora people have been stereotyped, and they've been stereotyped through the Moors. Historically, you understand there's a history of African diaspora people, African diaspora people being stereotyped long before slavery. People need to understand the Moors were discriminated against. Yeah, the Romans had created certain stereotypes about people, the Jews and the Moors. The Romans had stereotyped certain key individuals. So throughout history, people understand the Egyptians, the real Egyptians, were stereotyped throughout history. And it's important for people to know about stereotypes and labeling. And stereotype can be religion stereotypes, gender stereotypes. It's important for people to understand that today, yes, we can challenge some of them stereotypes. Yes, we can break some stereotypes, and we need to recognize as an individual who's from a marginalized group, one of the key things when I started to teach, and I'm a self-taught dance teacher, dance director, producer, anywhere I've gone in the world, I always teach that I need to first talk about stereotypes, because I can't promote a positive image through an image that you already have that have been subliminal, one that's negative. So example, UK jazz dance has been misrepresented. There's very little information about the facts around the history, the heritage, the culture. It doesn't exist. There's no heritage facts on UK jazz dance. The key book that's been written is a Eurocentric book. It omisses women from it, and women at the heart of UK jazz dance development, which is a term for UK underground jazz dance styles. Do you understand? Right. So it's important. There's no information. So what happens is automatically you're only going to have stereotypes, and you only can draw upon the popular stereotypes of the day. And as an individual, when you're teaching, it's important for individuals when you're involved in multicultural problems. I said, yes, we can develop multicultural projects. Yes, we can create culturally diverse projects. But what happens is there has to be, within it, there has to be people talking about stereotyping. Has to be one of the key things that you've got to break. Because cultural diversity, you have to know the history of cultural diversity. How did it come about? Most people don't have that knowledge and haven't been part of it. So they don't understand the importance of when people talk about cultural diversity, people living side by side with an understanding of each other, an understanding of their cultural biases and how that can impact on how they first see a person. So for example, I was at Oxford Brookes University. And one of the key things we know today, how do we communicate? First impressions mean something, is it not? Right. So I talked about the whole element about what impacts on people's first impression is already the cultural biases they have about a culture. Why would I say that? It's from my own experience and through research. I identify I am Jamaican and Grenadian. Most people don't associate me being Grenadian. They associate with me being a Jamaican. In this room, people write down the stereotypes that people have about Jamaican women and Jamaican males, for example, because that's how people view me. Most people, that's how they view me, and I say that through experience, through doing issue-based work around stereotyping and labeling and talking about how Jamaicans have been seen, and most importantly, how the stereotypes stem back to popular stereotypes going back to slavery and colonialization. That's how people have been viewed. The viewpoint of Jamaican males has not changed since slavery. We must understand what I'm saying here today. Since the 1600s, Jamaican culture, males are still viewed the same. Brawn, no brains. Reckless. No ambition. Docile. Highly sexed. All these things are the stereotypes go back to the days of slavery. And my work is saying that yes, we can get rid of them stereotypes by exploring the root. You'll hear me talk a lot. I talk about look at the root of your history, not the fruit. And identified our history is not true history until we celebrate it in its true context to its period, sharing its true significance. My true significance, when people see me, they view me as a Jamaican. And Jamaicans have a lot of stereotypes associated with them as an individual. And I talk about my true experience because our history, not history, till we celebrate its true context. My context is this. I went to suburban primary, I was stereotyped. I went to suburban secondary, I was stereotyped. I went to suburban colleges, further education, I was stereotyped. I was in the arts. I was stereotyped by middle class kids and middle class teachers in the arts. I went to a suburban university, and when I was there, '05 to '09, I was stereotyped by students, by some of my dyslexic workers. I was stereotyped by some of the counselors. I had to go to rehabilitation counseling for my transition of learning in a new way, because what happened is found out I was dyslexic after 41 years being labeled as a slow learner. So what happened, unfortunately, I had psychosomatic illnesses from asthma, undiagnosed dyslexia, undiagnosed visual stress, and psychosomatic illnesses. So I used to go to rehabilitation counseling. And even in that, one or two of the individuals I worked with, one of the two of the dyslexia workers I worked with, viewed me from a perspective of being Jamaican. And I say that was one of the things that came up. And it was quite shocking for me to experience, because I've gone to get support, and I got a lot of support. At times I didn't get support because people spoke to me or viewed me through a stereotype. That's lecturers and pupils. Lecturers and students. But because I started a long time ago an activity called Student Empowering Students from 1981, I said, yes, we can work together to break the stereotypes by looking at the work from an issue-based perspective and looking at it from a non-threatening perspective. Let's use the arts programs, the arts projects, and I created that. And it first started with, what stereotypes do you have about Jamaicans? Or what stereotypes do you have about cultures? Or what is a stereotype about you in this room? Because I was working with international students and homegrown students. So what can happen was I came into all them brackets. For example, what stereotypes are there around people with special education needs around the world? If people know at the beginning that people treat their special education needs were treated the same way people with mental health, what discriminations did they face? They faced the same thing. They were written off in society, and they were put in mental health asylums, or they were written off and left in the street to die. So there was a similar thing that people started to realize from a humanitarian perspective, that what happened, people started to realize that there's certain key things that happen that they're the same around the globe, e.g. working classes, seen as the lowly people, the people that are inferior, that you can do anything to. Remember, that's how royalty's seen it. So most of Europe had royalty. You have to understand. In the African world, there was royalty. You have to see the connections. In the Caribbean, there was no royalty. So you have to understand how we came to be stereotyped, not only by Westerners, by African people themselves. And all the nations of Europe. Do you understand the significance? How has that happened? Because we didn't have royalty. That's one of the reasons that stereotypes got perpetuated. Bigger, bolder, and better. Because the West Indians were seen as the enslaved people. I know that from knowledge, experience, and conversations that took place. Anyway, Blue UK Jazz is giving you insight to, yes, we can break stereotypes. Yes, we can look at creating programs around culture, because there's still a lot of work to be done, because the rise of racism has taken place. And the rise of racism has taken place in a time when our leaders, some of the people that were involved in the best cultural raising of awareness, the best people who brought about cultural awareness, have been lost, and their programs have been lost. This is one of the things that we have to understand, because basically they were in institutions, and you hear me talk a lot about leadership is action, not position. Why I'm saying that, some of the greatest projects happened, the greatest people who showed to be humanitarians, the greatest people who brought about social cultural cohesions, or the greatest movements that brought about social cultural cohesion, were not led by people in position. One of them is definitely jazz. One of them is blues. One of them is calypso. One of them is salsa. These cultures, tango, flamenco, when they were around, they came about from cross-cultural integration of experimentation of social development. It came about through communal development. And I come from an environment, Lancashire, the area I was born, Manchester, the areas, inner cities that I grew up in and socialized in for music, Hare Hills, Handsworth, Brixton. All these were areas that brought about social cultural cohesion to the whole of the UK and Britain. So Moss Side was one, Hare Hills was one, Handsworth was one, Bristol was one. So you've got all the St. Paul's, all the areas, the inner city areas where the areas where immigrants were and had a history of immigrants coming there, and immigrants living side by side, different faiths, showing tolerance, etc. It's important for people to understand these areas have not been acknowledged for the legacy of leadership. Because one of the key things, yes, we can learn from the wisdoms of history, learn from the lessons of wisdoms from the past, what had been done. And what has happened in the society is people are trying to wipe out inner city legacy of leadership. Its achievements, benefits, contributions. You cannot wipe it out, because the wisdoms that we have today, the freestyle arts that we have today, the holistic arts, we have the communal values, attitudes, and behavior that myself from the people from 48, 50s, 60s, born in this Britain today, they brought about a new cultural way of living. So one of them, for example, sound system came through 48, 50, 60. Do you understand? You can't write out reggae culture. Reggae culture itself brought a meditative culture into society, brought a look after yourself culture, brought in what is called ITIL food, brought about an interest in looking at art, crafts, looking at the world from a perspective of changing it. Remember, that's what reggae music did. Reggae music raised the awareness around the world of the apartheid, as well as the Americans did. They raised the awareness, so it led to individual politicians having an understanding of the issues that were happening was coming through reggae music. Reggae music brought a consciousness of raising oneself to be better, bigger and bolder, not to live for yourself, but to be humanitarian, to seek peace. And people don't understand that. So you have UNESCO, big organization that creates programs around peace. Reggae was creating peace. Jazz was creating peace. Blues was creating peace. UK jazz dancing, the art form I did, brought about social cultural cohesion in Britain. The dancers did, not the DJs. Because the DJs colluded with the fact that there was something called Black Door policy, us not getting into the clubs in the first place. So when I speak on UK Jazz, I'm the first one saying, yes, we can talk and present and communicate to individuals. Example, the misrepresentation on UK Jazz Dance, the misinterpretations on UK Jazz Dance, and the impact of it, it led to a miseducation on this art, on UK Jazz Dance. It glamorized UK Jazz Dance, because what happened, the art form was created from our struggle to success in life. We were struggles to what? To fight adversity. What struggles were we having? We were facing racism, the trauma of racism, the trauma of betrayal. Our parents got betrayed when they came here. They worked and paid the taxes for the children to get a wholesome education, but they didn't. They got a miseducation that told them that they were inferior at an impressionable age. So many African diaspora youth grew up with inferiority complex, because the society at large had projected to them a miseducation about who they were, projected negative images, popular racial stereotypes that people started to actually show they had these stereotypes. Do you understand? And that what happened, our parents had to send us to programs which were created to re-educate us to believe that we're somebody, that we have contributed significantly to the society at large, socially, physically, intellectually, culturally, emotionally, politically, economically, technologically, environmentally, legally, because the society was miseducating us. So our primary school education was a miseducation. Our parents paid taxes. They got betrayed. Our parents paid for us to go to college. They paid for us to go to secondary school. Miseducation. All my life, I've faced a miseducation. Yes, we can speak about it today. Because what we're in a time of rethinking, it's been acknowledged that the educational system had miseducated millions of people. The British education system, Britain colonialized 423 million people, 23% of the world's population. They miseducated all them people to believe that they were inferior and Western society was dominant. That led to global mishealth. They brought in Victorian values. Victorian values were to see the child but don't hear the child. So what they did, they repressed the child's self-expression from very early on and made the child repressed. What happened, Victorian values was brought into society. We don't breastfeed the child. When you do that, what it does, it leads to abandonment issues. So what happened, they escalated abandonment issues. And if you know anything about Victorians, well, we do know about what happened in how they treated children in this world. Children were treated like trash. And it's important for people to have an understanding of what impact did that have on society. The society in Britain didn't want the working classes to get an education. So when you think about illiteracy rate in Britain, the numeracy rate, the lack of numeracy, the lack of illiteracy, the lack of ability to use the internet, because you have to be able to read and you have to be able to understand and decipher to use the internet in the first place. For Britain to be such a modern country, to have the lack of numeracy and lack of literacy goes back into history. And yes, we can evidence that. And we can evidence it from the internet. And what I'm really trying to encourage people, that you should be using the internet to do research. I don't have to leave my home. I've got my mobile phone. People have more of an interest to learn about other people than they do to learn about themselves. So yes, we can learn our own legacy of leadership by studying it. That comes from self-reflection. And that's what I've been involved in. This project I'm doing, Rebirth for the Call, is involved in. Yes, we can. One of the key, and we can today identify what wisdoms that we have, the ability to act and think, utilizing knowledge, common sense through a process called self-reflection, through a process called legacy writing, through a process called self-assessment of your knowledge, experience and skills. And it's important that you do that, because what happens, that will increase your self-awareness. Self-awareness increases your health, increases your happiness and well-being. What's the importance to me? Well, the importance to me was I wasn't aware I had dyslexia to the age of 41. What happened was I wasn't aware that I had asthma to the age of 47. I wasn't aware I had visual stress to the age of 43. Do you understand? These all had impact on my health. I wasn't aware that I suffered from psychosomatic illnesses, because recurring psychosomatic illnesses, because of the dyslexia undiagnosed, because of the asthma undiagnosed, because of the visual stress undiagnosed. I wasn't aware that people with dyslexia are more likely for their immune system to go down. So the irony, post-university, after doing research into my health and into research to do with dyslexia stress, I still was to learn new lessons about myself, which was the fact I was in a house fire. That is how I learned I had asthma, and then he died. Is what I did during the period in what happened. My ability to dance gave me the ability to survive during a house fire. That's just simply what it was. My positive mental attitude, being stuck in a room which is smoky and my body's congested with the fumes. My positive mental attitude is what got me out of that room. Was my ability to think quickly on my feet in an improvisational way. When a fire is raging through your home, how do you get out and what you do? I thought quickly. And simply what happened, I dropped to the floor because I was disorientated and confused. That's what happened to me. But quickly I used my cognition, and what happened, I was trying to feel my way out by standing, and I couldn't. And I made a decision, I need to drop to the floor, because visually, when I dropped to the floor, I understood. When I touched around, I knew exactly where I was because I know my own home. And what happened when I dropped to the floor, that is how I got out to get to the door. But that would never happen if I didn't dance. And it wouldn't happen if I was an individual, didn't play, exploring how learning through play, games, through competition, collaborating with others, experiment and improvising. That would never happen. And so I tell people, yes, we can improve our ability to learn, think and development through continuous personal development training, from continuous professional development, and from continuous research and development into learning in how to learn. And in learning about coping with stress and coping with anxiety is important for one's learning and development. How to prevent it, how to cope with it, how to overcome it, and how to deal with chronic stress and chronic anxiety. What that can bring in life when you go through that, how to bring yourself back out of it. Blue K Jazz Dance out.